Kash Patel has consistently pushed false claims of voter fraud during the 2020 election, including a widely debunked film by the name of 2,000 Mules. And now the man who made the film, Dinesh D'Souza, is finally admitting publicly, that parts of the film are simply not true. The core of D'Souza's conspiracy theory contended that Democrats hired mules during the 2020 election to collect and drop off ballots at the same drop boxes multiple times. D'Souza released a statement on his website yesterday admitting the data he used to promote that theory was not accurate and that he only recently learned of the inconsistencies.
Oh, please.
I mean,
come on. Everybody, even Ann Coulter said it was stupid years ago. It was so patently, obviously, stupidly false, and everybody knew it when it came out.
D'Souza also issued an apology to an Atlanta area man who sued after the film wrongly identified him as a so-called mule, repeatedly dropping off ballots. Despite those admissions, D'Souza maintains the underlying premise of his film, quote, holds true, and continues to claim there was substantial fraud in the 2020 election.
No evidence.
Without providing any evidence to back up
Never provide, Jonathan Lemire. They never provide any evidence. They do the damage. They do wild claims.
Say they're sorry.
They destroy people's lives. Look at Rudy Giuliani, the lives that Rudy Giuliani destroyed and the cost of it to those women, and now the financial cost to Rudy Giuliani, the lies repeated over and over again. And one of those lies lies at the center of the guy who wants to be the next director of the FBI. And what are you hearing on the Hill from Senate Republicans? Are there 4 Senate Republicans that are going to say, you know, it may not be a good idea that we actually put a guy in charge of the FBI who says he's going to shut down the building on day one. He's going to arrest journalists and reporters that didn't follow Dinesh D'Souza's lies on conspiracy theories about the 2020 election. And he has an enemies list, and he's promised to persecute those on his enemies list.
Yeah, first on Dinesh D'Souza, the 2,000 Mules has been debunked now. The book version had to be retracted and re-edited. The publisher has apologized and halted distribution of the book. And now yesterday, D'Souza himself apologizing and say that the film was based on inaccuracies. It's wrong every way about it from the start. And you're right, there are some real consequences here for innocent people. But Kash Patel, at least so far, hasn't paid any consequences for supporting these lies. In fact, it's partially why he's Donald Trump's choice to be FBI director. And what I'm hearing on the Hill is, look, yesterday, this was the first day senators were back on the Hill since the choice of Patel was announced. And, you know, there was, you know, even a Susan Collins, who many expect will stand in opposition to this. She paid lip service to, like, of course, we need to learn more about him and do the process and so on. So, you know, senators are not going to come out right away and say, no, I'm not for this. But we're already hearing rumblings that there will be plenty who will not be. Collins, Murkowski, we expect Mitch McConnell, others, Senator Rounds, one who has expressed some misgivings already. There's a belief that this number will grow, because if you get to 4, it's scuttled. And if you get to 4, you probably get to 6, 8, 10, 12, and the like, because others will be able to jump in, maybe if not wanting to be that decisive vote. So, Jackie, let's get your sense of this, because right now Republican senators do have a bit of a balancing act. They got some calculus here. How many of these can they oppose? Matt Gaetz took himself out of the running, sparing themselves a no vote. But we had Pete Hegseth, who we'll talk more about later. He was on the Hill yesterday trying to lobby senators. We know there's real growing opposition to him because of some of the allegations that are coming forward in the New Yorker reporting in other places. And we also have some senators saying, why is Christopher Wray being fired? He's done a good job. And let's not forget, Wray himself only in the post because Trump fired James Comey because of allegations that he was meddling with the Russia investigation. So give us the state of play there. What's got to be a stressful time for these Republican senators.
Yeah, Jonathan, this is going to be a real test for Republicans who face a number of controversial nominees that Trump has appointed to the most high-profile and powerful positions in the government. Yesterday, Pam Bondi was making the rounds on Capitol Hill, who, at least compared to the rest of the crew of picks, is one of the less controversial choices that Trump has made. But as we've spoken about extensively, there are still a handful of others who rank up there with Kash Patel in terms of their conspiratorial and controversial views. I think that Republicans on the Hill so far, as you noted, are loath to come out hot on this and outright deny and say that they're not going to support certain nominees. They want to at least go have the appearances of going through a fair and thorough process. And that's why I think you're seeing now a number of Republicans, even some more conservative Republicans who would be more likely to support Trump's picks unconditionally, call for FBI background checks. They're basically now rallying around process, trying to get Trump and the Trump transition process to go the more traditional route, which is a little bit of a sea change already from what we saw at the beginning of November when Trump initially won the election, and we were talking about recess appointments. Now you have people like John Kennedy who are calling for thorough background checks with the FBI, so people like Patel can be vetted, and so that Republicans on the Hill have the full array of facts on them. But you are right that there probably is some sort of internal thinking about these limits of how far they can oppose Trump at the end of the day. But if there is this growing constituency of opposition, like we've seen with Matt Gaetz, it ultimately might have the power to persuade Trump otherwise.
Yeah, FBI background checks should be the bare minimum for people who want these really important jobs. But of course, we know Donald Trump and his transition team running their own process. Joe and Mika, just one last point on the Dinesh D'Souza film, because it is so foundational when you talk to Trump supporters. Yeah. It's shorthand, 2,000 mules, the election was stolen. He did make that one apology about the information in the movie, but went on to say the underlying premise of the film holds true. He says there was fraud sufficient to call the outcome into question. There was not. I only bring that up because that is something that Kash Patel is heavily invested in, the idea that the 2020 election was stolen and that he's going to seek retribution against the people he perceives to have stolen him. So those will be among the questions asked of Kash Patel if he makes it through to the confirmation hearing.
Well, so I'm curious. I'm curious. Is he going to go after these 63 federal judges,
right,
who said the lie was bullshit? Is he going to go after them? Is he going to go after the United States Supreme Court, who said it was bullshit? Is he going to go after Clarence Thomas and Alito, the two most conservative justices who, when they reviewed the Pennsylvania appeal, said, well, we need to look at this for legal reasons, but it wouldn't have changed the outcome of the election. Is he going to go after them as well? I mean, seriously, 63 federal decisions. The Supreme Court. You can go on and on and on. I mean, this is absolutely preposterous. I will tell you what else is preposterous, too.
You can use BS.
I did. Did I not say that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I said that. Yeah.
Sure.
So anyway,
that's what I heard.
I'll tell